Did you know that you can make your life-saving donation to Doctors Without Borders go even further? Whether you donate stock, recommend a grant through your donor-advised fund, or make an IRA-qualified charitable distribution, you can take advantage of strong market performance this year to maximize your charitable impact, making it possible for Doctors Without Borders to stay ready to respond in more than 70 countries around the world. Together, we go further. Explore ways to give at doctorswithoutborders.org/podcast.
Credit Karma makes building your credit straightforward and stress-free with help from our credit builder. Sign up today at creditkarma.com and start enhancing your financial health. Credit Karma, your partner in building a brighter financial future. Credit Builder plan is serviced by Credit Karma Credit Builder and requires a line of credit and savings account provided by Cross River Bank, member FDIC.
I said it before and I stand by it, mostly because I think that's what you are as a fan. You're a little bit ignorant.
Maybe more than a little bit.
It's the arrival. I came in the league, went straight for the title.
Intercepted! Rod Moore! And Michigan will win the game! Touchdown! Marvin Harrison Jr. Marvelous!
Hail, hail Michigan, the champions of college football.
There's nothing quite like the game.
Michigan versus Ohio State.
This is The Rivalry, proud to be part of the Varsity Network from Learfield and sponsored by Elevated Integrity Construction.
Welcome back to the Rivalry Podcast. Jace, JP, Michigan, Ohio State, your garbage-free college football podcast focused on the Ohio State-Michigan college football rivalry. It's sports talk without the tangents from River Radio Ministries and presented by Elevated Integrity Construction. We are now in the postseason officially. The college football playoff starts this weekend. Well, Michigan is still in the postseason, my guy.
But not the one that people care about.
Until January 20th, we are still defending national champions. I will have you know. Let's break the ice with a little bit of a wheel route here. You can follow on social media at Rival Pod. Seems like a good time to shout out that JP is going to be at the Horseshoe on Saturday night. Negative temperatures, negative wind chill. Have a blast. Be sure to follow his coverage.
I'm so glad we got this one.
At Rival Pod. If you're not watching on YouTube, same handle. Did they get the Heisman right?
I know your answer.
You might not.
Okay. Let's hear it.
Yeah, they got it right. And here's the reality. I've been on the Ashton Genty train alongside you. I think either one of those
I wouldn't have been sad.
Either one, my wife Lindsay was asking me like, hey, like, do you feel like, is that the guy when Travis Wunsch said, is that the guy that you were telling me you think probably would win? I said, yeah. And I told her, I said, he is just as deserving as Ashton Genty. Mm-hmm. I think Genty should have won it. So in that case, no, they got it wrong. But you can't tell me between Hunter and Genty, like either one of those is the right answer.
The only way they get it wrong is if it would have been a Dylan Gabriel or a Cam Warren.
Sure.
The only way. And I don't think that was even, those guys knew they weren't winning it too.
No. So yeah, they got it right. I thought Genty was more deserving of it, but I also am willing to say that I think the hype around Colorado, Coach Prime, Travis Hunter turned me off to wanting to see him win it. There's the first time a hater has ever admitted to being a hater. I'll admit that I'm being a hater, but I also think he deserves it. He feels really full of himself, and I don't enjoy watching it.
I'm the opposite.
I enjoy watching him play because he's incredibly talented. I don't enjoy listening to him talk about himself. Just straight up, I just don't enjoy it.
And I love it.
I know you do because we're so opposite in this way.
I've been on the Colorado hype train, and I tried to get off it numerous times this year and pick against them.
There were no stops available.
And then they decided, no, you don't get this. I agree with you for everything you just said. I thought it's a little bit unfair when you've got a guy like Travis Hunter going up against a guy that's playing one position. But I think it speaks to the volume of what kind of athlete Travis Hunter really is. You don't see guys do that at all, but not only do it, but do it at an elite level. I mean, people were bringing up, he's not even 1,000-yard receiver. He's this and this. And how are you saying? Like they were talking about him winning the Biletnikoff or whatever. And they were bringing up all these other wide receivers. The San Jose State guy, I think they kept bringing up saying, man, look how many yards. He had an exponentially better season. I would argue, and I think you could probably throw in a handful of other receivers that are probably better than him. Like I would say a Jeremiah Smith, I probably would take as a receiver over
I'm
him.
not sure he deserved to win the Bletnikoff.
Yeah, I don't think he deserved that per se. But when you have a guy like him that is elite, he's a dangerous weapon. He's a clear number one on the receiving end. And then on the opposite side is just as dang good. I just don't see how a guy like that doesn't get rewarded for it.
There's, between him and Genty, either one of those guys could very easily be named the best player in college football, which is obviously what the whole Heisman thing is about. And I think that's a draw where I'm not going to lose sleep over the fact that it was Hunter over Genty. Is what Travis Hunter does has not been done since at least Charles Woodson.
Yeah, I was going to say, right? Charles Woodson's the last one.
And even I was talking with my dad about this over the weekend. Charles Woodson would not play the number of offensive snaps that Travis Hunter's playing. Now, snaps in and of themselves don't make you the best player.
No,
I could play every single snap, and I'm telling you right now,
you wouldn't.
No one doesn't want. Nobody wants that. It's the efficiency, it's the talent. But at least since Woodson, we've not seen anybody execute both sides of the ball that much at that level with that much success.
It'll be so long until we see another Travis Hunter. And we will see another Ashton Jeanty.
Sure. And I'm curious, what will that look like moving into the NFL? Because it's a different beast. And some of the NFL players saying, yeah, it's not college anymore. As difficult as that is to do what he's doing, it's a very different thing. But also for as much as I don't love the ego, he's very confident in himself.
He backs it up.
He's very confident. He does back it up. And so if he wants to play both ways, I'm sure he's going to give it everything he's got to play both ways in the NFL.
And that's why I want my Browns. That's why I want my Browns to draft him, because usually we screw up draft picks. You get two chances to screw this one up. So
and even the Browns couldn't screw that one up.
Don't you say that. They would. They absolutely could and will.
Want to say real quick here before we jump into Ohio State's matchup with Tennessee. Now that we are in the postseason, a reminder that this is a small budget podcast, and so if you've subscribed, if you've been listening for the last 6 seasons, or you just found us in the last couple weeks, number one, thank you. That means a lot to us. Appreciate the subscribing. Appreciate you sharing. Appreciate you listening. If you'd like to support the podcast as well, either through getting yourself one of our brand new t-shirts this season, or you just want to throw a little bit of money our way to say, hey, keep doing what you're doing. There's a lot of potential here, particularly for Ohio State after the Tennessee game. What does it look like to go out and play Oregon? What is it? A semifinal game? There's travel expenses, there's hotels, there's flights, there's all that stuff. There's just marketing the podcast better. There's a lot of good that can be done. There's a lot of need here. So if that's something that interests you, you are needed. You've got the opportunity to do that. Rivalpod.com is the best place to do that. Rivalpod.com. We got a little support tab up there. You can click on that, and we would really appreciate your support as we head here into the postseason.
Is it Ohio State time?
It's Ohio State time. And after I say all that, mostly your financial support is going to be going towards next season because Ohio State ain't getting through this game.
Okay. Well, spicy take early.
So
do you want to give your final score first then? Because we all know you picked Ohio State to lose.
Yeah, I'll give you my final score right off the bat. Yeah, I think it's 23-17 Tennessee.
I've got 27 Ohio State, 24 Tennessee.
So, I mean, here's the reality that you're going to see right off the bat here is that this is the Spider-Man meme. Like the teams are not in every case, but there's a reason that these are the 8-9 and that it was talked about. Well, would you flip them? Would you not?
Yeah, because
these are two really, really similar football teams. The one thing I want to note before we get into it here is that I had to pin the Tennessee quarterback's pronunciation guide to the top of my notes. You won't be able to see it on camera. I'd show you. Iamaleava. And I have been practicing that
fluid.
Because I've been practicing it for days.
In front of the mirror.
For days. Nico Iamaleava. We'll get into him, but I want you to go though. As the resident Buckeye, what are you looking at coming into this game? Because there's a handful of storylines that you could go with that are pretty evident, but I'm curious, what are you looking for and how do you feel about some of these basic things here?
Yeah. What I'm looking for, I feel like is different than what I feel like I'm probably going to see. And that's what makes me a little bit worried. I'm still confident the Buckeyes can pull this out. But like you said, this is the Spider-Man meme. You're looking at both of these teams, both top 5 defenses, both have explosive offenses. I do think I would give the nod at quarterback to Will Howard, but I think an underrated piece that a lot of people are kind of skipping over in this matchup is running back Dylan Sampson. This dude is not getting talked about as a weapon. And to me, he's the most explosive person on the Tennessee offense. He's got about 1,500 yards on the ground, 22 touchdowns. The dude is a monster.
He is top 10 in rushing yards. He is tied for 4th in the country with those 22 touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, the dude is just a stud, and he doesn't get talked about, at least in this matchup. Tennessee fans and people in the SEC are familiar with him.
Folks that know,
but every single time that people are talking about this matchup, it's the quarterback battle. To me, that's not where this game is going to be won. This game is going to be won in the trenches. That sounds like a cop-out answer, but I truly believe that's the case. You've got a stud defensive line in Tennessee. You've got a stitched together, continue to be stitched together Ohio State offensive line. They're even talking about shifting pieces around now, and we're talking about a playoff game. We're talking playoffs, not
Thank
practice.
you for that. I wasn't going to interrupt you for that. But yeah, Padilla and Montgomery. Padilla? I don't know. And Montgomery, I'm a Michigan guy. I don't have to know. But Padilla and Montgomery being talked about as part of that reshuffled offensive line is not what you want at this stage of the season.
Going into a game where yet again the team you're going to be playing has a super strong defensive line. But on the other side, Ohio State's got a really good defensive line and a really solid defense. The top defense in the nation. They allow just under 100 rushing yards a game. I think it's like 95 or 96. So that's where I'm going to be looking at is I'm going to be looking at who can win the rushing battle. It's going to be very similar to the Michigan game. Whatever team wins the rushing battle on Saturday, I think is going to be the one that comes home with the victory. And in my mind, I think Ohio State's defense, they're not the reason Ohio State lost to Michigan.
No.
It was all offense. So to me, I'm confident that Ohio State's defense can continue to slow down this explosive Tennessee offense to give Ohio State a chance. I do think Will Howard's health was a little bit of a factor. Not that that's an excuse. I think play calling and all that boils down to the Michigan thing. You can listen to that whole podcast.
There's like 5 different reasons why they lost that game.
But I do think that impacted a portion of it. And so I think having this time off for him to fully get back to himself, be healthy. I hope, I don't want to say I think, I hope that this team comes out angry. If for all the talk that we hear all the time from Ryan Day, from the coaching staff, from everybody that's in leadership in that program about we're a tough team. We're going to come out there and we're going to play Ohio State football. We're going to show you who we are. All the talk that they're hearing after that Michigan loss, everybody calling them soft, everybody. And I know how Ryan Day, and that's why I wanted to preface this by saying what I hope happens versus what I think will happen are two different things. I hope that it ticks you off. I hope that Ohio State, that Jack Sawyer, that JT Tuimoloau, that Lathan Ransom, I hope that Will Howard, Jeremiah Smith, I hope the running back duo, I hope Judkins and Travion heard all the noise from that Michigan game. I hope that offensive line heard about how they couldn't do anything. They're not going to be able to run the ball whatsoever. And I hope they pull out a Penn State performance and they come out there and establish the ground game. They open up the air a little bit, get some passing going around. The people that are talking about, well, bring the SEC down here and it's going to be cold. It's not going to matter. That is a non-factor to me. It's going to be a clear day from what I saw. Last I checked,
real field temperatures are going to be in the teens, but with wind gusts up to 23 miles an hour.
It's going to come down to the ground game.
It's going to be worse than it was for the Michigan game.
It's going to, which I didn't think was bad. I didn't think it was bad.
But when you've got a coach saying, "Well, it was a tad windy out," that's instilling a lot of confidence.
And that's the thing. I think, to me, I need to see an Ohio State inspired performance where you've got to know, and I don't care what the athletic director, I don't care what any of those guys say.
Yeah.
Ryan Day's coaching for his job on Saturday. If he wasn't against Michigan, you think the fan base is going to let this slide if they lose? Absolutely not. The players that have backed him all season long that said, we want to come out here and win this for Ryan Day. I don't fault the players really that much for the Michigan game. I'm looking at this coaching staff and I'm saying, how can you guys respond to that disgusting performance at the end of November? Yeah. How are you going to bounce back? And there's parts of me that look at the track record and I go, probably not great. and I look and I
agree. And you've read my portion of these notes.
And I look at Ryan Day and I go, okay, if there's one similarity between every big game he has ever coached in, it is that there will come a pivotal moment in this game on Saturday where he needs to make the right decision, and he will in fact make the wrong one. And you won't really know what it is until after the game, when you can then pinpoint it and go, that was pretty dumb. And then you get very mad and you dwell on it for years, like not going for it on 4th down in Mercedes-Benz Stadium with the national championship on the line against Georgia, who you had on the ropes up 9, and then you gave it away, and then you ended up losing. But I haven't held that grudge at all.
It's the Wolf of Wall Street meme where he kind of like whistles points at the TV.
I'm fine.
When you're sitting there on your couch and you see it happen. It's like,
and I know.
That's what we talked to. It's the same thing you do when Nick Benosin takes a PI. It's like, oh, there it is.
It's the same thing. So what I feel like is going to happen is this is going to be a game. Ohio State's going to have chances to kind of blow the doors off of it, and I just don't think they will. I don't think they will. I think the offense for Ohio State is a high-powered offense still. I think the defense is good enough to let them compete with anybody in the nation. But I just don't think they're going to. I think they're going to get it done ultimately, but I think it's going to be a nail biter. I think it's going to be uncomfortable, and I think you're going to walk away. You're going to be pumped because they're going to advance to go against Oregon. Everybody's going to get the rematch that I think they've been wanting all season long, that they wanted in the Big Ten championship games until Ohio State said, "Nah,
I didn't want it."
And so I think we'll get that matchup. But you're going to walk away with a lot to talk about. There's going to be a lot of things you're going to want to see fix, and I don't know if it's going to help the conversation for Ryan Day's job any further.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair analysis. I mean, like, I'm going to obviously differ because I'm taking Tennessee here, but I mean, obviously, like, we've watched a ton of football over the years. We've watched a ton of Ohio State, a ton of Michigan this season, naturally, and I mean, in all the things you're talking about, like, you're spot on. I'm just going to take them to a different conclusion, right? So the battle in the trenches is going to be the big one. Like you said, hey, it's going to be a trench battle. A trench battle does not behoove Ohio State. Tennessee's strength is their defensive line. Ohio State's strength is not their offensive line. And I think when we're talking about guys getting shifted around and moved back in, number one, yeah, like, that is the right thing to do right now, because you can't trot back out whatever that was against Michigan. Mm-hmm. It's also a risk. And so it's kind of a catch-22 in that, from that perspective for Day and the coaching staff, because it's kind of darned if you do, darned if you don't at this point. It's just not a good spot to be in with Tennessee coming up, particularly the way they match up. And by the way, if you get through that, Oregon on the other side of that is also not a great matchup, because we saw what Oregon was able to do in beating Ohio State with a far better offensive line. And also Oregon did not have one of their star edge rushers in that game either. So like, that's getting down the line, but like this is a big factor. The trench battle's big. The weather is probably overblown how much it may impact, but like, it is a thing though. That can be a thing. If it is bitterly cold and 25-mile-an-hour wind gusts, like that then can become a factor where you do have to. The Michigan game was not that, by the way.
No, but in that case, it impacts both teams. It's not Ohio State's going to be used to it, and
for sure.
Have you been out in a blizzard? It's cold for everybody, my guy.
If in any way the weather forces a bit more ground game, that's not an advantage for Ohio State. Mm-hmm. That's an advantage for a team with Dylan Sampson on it, who, like we said, top 10, top 5 running back, depending on what stat you want to look at. I think on the flip side of that, Tennessee gives up, I think they've given up 24 sacks this season. So like, that's where Ohio State on that defensive line and those linebackers and stuff, that's where they can maybe wreak some havoc too. So it's true that it's going to depend on the trenches, but also at the same time, I look at it and go, okay, one of the reasons that I'm taking Tennessee here is Ohio State has struggled to run the football at various points throughout the year, in big moments throughout the year. The Michigan game is obviously the best example of it, and Tennessee's defensive line looks a lot like Michigan's. Maybe not as good, but it's still pretty solid. Ohio State has struggled to run the ball at various key points throughout the year, but their passing ability is really, really good when they decide that they want to utilize their NFL caliber wide receivers. For Tennessee, because again, I'm looking for like margins and X factors and whatever. For Tennessee, their running game is really, really good. Their passing game is a little bit hot and cold. When it's hot, it's hot. When it's cold, it's cold. But for me, I'm looking at it saying that I think Tennessee, especially you throw in a bit of a mobile quarterback in there where Iamaleava has a chance to maybe, if you kind of like what Dylan Gabriel did, you overcommit, he can squeeze his way out of the pocket and go. I feel like that gives them a wider range of weapons than Ohio State may have in this game. Where, Will Howard's got some running ability. He doesn't utilize it a ton. Nico probably uses it a little bit more. I think Tennessee's run game is astronomically better than Ohio State's. I think the passing game is a big advantage for Ohio State, but it's not that astronomical margin. So I feel like Tennessee has got themselves in a really good spot in this game. The other place I want to talk about too, and you mentioned this, is kind of that mental side of it, right? Mm-hmm. Where, there are times where people will talk, ESPN will toss stats out like, well, this coach is 3-5 against top 10 teams on Thursdays. And you go, this is not a real thing.
After they've had a steak dinner, right. They're 2-3 versus a top 5 team on the beaches of Normandy.
It's like, not a real thing. The mental block for Ryan Day is a real thing.
Oh, for sure.
And so that's going to be part of it, where we talked about this with the Michigan game. You mentioned, and by the way, I get what you're saying. I'm not even knocking that at all, where I want them to come out angry. I want them to come out furious and frustrated. What have they been doing in the Michigan game for 4 years? Mm-hmm. Particularly, what have they done? I'll even say the last couple of years, in 22, Brian Hartline gets up in Skull Session and talks about, they've been talking about our coach and what's done in the dark comes to the light and whatever. And you got blown out at home.
Well, and you're seeing stuff. I know this was speculating a lot where the new athletic director was coming out and talking specifically about the game. And he said, we put too much emphasis on the game. That's the problem.
Yeah, that's not the problem.
And in my mind, I thought, you need to get out now. Like that might be the shortest run as AD I've ever seen in my life.
I heard that was on 97.1 The Fan, shout out here in Columbus. I heard that live. I was in Starbucks. I was in a Starbucks line. I went, what did he say?
I didn't. That's like when Kyle McCord was like, it's just another game.
No, it's not.
It is not, my guy.
No.
It's just not. It's just not. And I didn't catch the final context. You might have to fill this gap. I feel like what he was trying to say is that we've hyped it up so much that it's almost like a mental barrier in our players' heads, which I still disagree with.
I think that's what he was getting at was it was almost, and I'm going to take this from the Michigan spin, right? It sounded like, we can't seem to figure this out, so we need to downplay it till we can get over that hump.
Yeah, it's like a mental blockade that you're just like, we put too much pressure on ourselves by hyping it up too much. That ain't it. Which to me just reiterates the softness.
It shows that you're not prepared for it, right? Like it was a bizarre comment.
Yeah, I read that and immediately was disgusted.
But if we're talking about, and again, I understand what you're saying, but if we're talking about, I get them to come out angry and be frustrated and all these things. 22, we heard all this talk. 23 was we're a tough team. We're going to do this. The Connor Stallion stuff where it's like, oh, now's our chance to really show them why we lost the last couple of years. Nothing happened. 24, this season, just a few weeks ago, was the greatest opportunity Ohio State's had in a long time to really stick it to your rival, to get the monkey off the back, and you shanked it like a 30-yard field goal.
Twice.
Where it's not about them, it's about us, our care. At some point, and I've said this now for a couple years on this podcast, if I'm an Ohio State fan, I'm tired of hearing about we're frustrated, we're angry, we're coming out. If there was ever a time for Ohio State, let me just wrap this up. If there was ever a time for Ohio State to come out angry and come out focused and come out whatever, it was the Michigan game. And they didn't. So there's no body of work that then tells me, yeah, we can now turn around a few weeks later against Tennessee, and the frustration, the anger, the let's make it right is going to mean a lick of difference.
No, I don't want to hear talk. I don't want to hear talk at all. And this is the difference between football programs for me. And I think
it's show me. If I'm a Buckeye fan, show me all the things you keep talking about, because when push comes to shove, it doesn't happen.
Well, this is a rarity to find, and I think Oregon has found it in Dan Lanning. The culture shift is vastly different.
Absolutely.
And I don't even know if I brought this up as a recap after the Michigan game, but when I was standing on the sideline towards the end, and it was still a tie game at 10 apiece for the Michigan game, and I'm seeing these huddles, and Ryan Day's just 10, 15 feet away by himself, not engaged. He's just sitting there watching around. And you look back at the Urban Meyer era, and you look around and you see him with his clipboard and his headset, and he's pumping up the crowd and he's flinging his arms, and you can feel that he feels the energy. And then you look over at Dan Lanning, and they're playing, I think it was Washington, right? Was it? Who was it that they ended the year with? It was Washington.
Yep.
And he's in the locker room at halftime. And smashing helmets. And he pulls a helmet out and he said, I forget what the exact phrase, but he's like, we talked about it all week. We're punching helmets or whatever. And they get a freaking bat and they smash a Washington Husky. And you saw the players buy in. Every player that Oregon has bought into what Dan Lanning has been saying for years now, since he's been there. And he has built a culture. And I always talk about it with my wife. She doesn't care at all. About football guys. You see it with the Detroit Lions and Dan Campbell.
Yeah.
Give me a group of guys that just know ball, that have the fire, the competitive drive. I don't care about these guys that are super smart, analytical. That's the whole problem with the Browns. This obviously isn't an NFL podcast, but you look at these guys that just don't seem to have that competitive fire.
You need a kneecap biter.
I need a kneecap biter. This just doesn't have the feel, the culture at Ohio State right now. And I think it can change. I think you have the players that want that. I think the Jack Sawyer has the fire inside of him and just needs redirected in the right way. Same thing with JTT. Same thing with Cody Simon. All those guys, I think, have that fire because you can't be at the level that they're out at without it. Yeah. But the coaching staff has got to instill that. And so that's where, as a fan, I'm at the point you said it perfectly. It's no more talk about it. It's let's be about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and this is not a unique take to me, but I think even going back to the 2021 Michigan Ohio State game, this might have been Patrick Barron, who's one of the Michigan beat photographers for MGO blog. I don't remember if it was him or not, but it was somebody on that beat had talked about, they had been asked at what point in that 21 game where Michigan finally beat Ohio State, at what point did you know this felt different? And this individual said, whether it was Patrick or whoever, said when they were coming out of the tunnel for the second half and Ohio State was a little bit not down, like it was a very tight game, but like they were just a little bit more
nonchalant
or a little bit stiff, perhaps. And Michigan was loose as heck. They were chirping a little bit in the tunnel. You could tell they were loose. They were coming down the tunnel, they had that feel that things were going to be different. That was when, and even watching, I was at that game as a fan, watching with my younger brother, and he and I had even remarked that in the game in the second half when, and I don't remember who it was at this point, I'm blank. It doesn't really matter. One of the players had grabbed Roman Wilson's helmet and kind of ripped it off. They were kind of tossing in the end zone.
Yeah, Brown.
Was it Brown? Who then later got hurled like a fool, by the way, by Hassan Haskins. But when he got Roman's helmet off there and it kind of ensued this whole fracas and all this other stuff, that's when we knew, oh, we're in their heads. You could start to see the cracks starting to form a little bit. And those have not been put back together. And again, it's different team, it's different roster, but you get the picture that I'm trying to paint here of that mental fortitude. So as we come into to bring it back to Tennessee, as you come into the Tennessee game, sometimes mental stuff can get overplayed. I don't think it's being overplayed here. I think this is absolutely a factor in this game. So you've got Ohio State, who for the 13 weeks or whatever has started slow. Not every game, but many games. Nebraska, Penn State, Michigan immediately come to mind, right? Even Oregon, not really.
No,
Oregon
I mean, they
was
had
a little
some
bit
key
different.
mistakes in that early beginning,
but they've in
Marshall,
Indiana for that matter. So a lot of the last month for Ohio State has started slow, and somebody had remarked on social, well, I'll be concerned when it becomes a pattern. Well, it's been a pattern for the last month.
Does every game count? So
if you're Ohio State, I'm very curious to watch what happens if you don't start fast. If you're not, if you're up 14-0 in the first 10 minutes of this game, I'm feeling pretty good if I'm Ohio State because I've got them on the ropes. I've got the confidence. What happens if that doesn't happen? Somebody had asked this in the presser a couple weeks ago and I mentioned this in my blog at rivalpod.com, where they had said, basically that same question of what happens if you encounter that same frustration you had in the Michigan game against Tennessee. And he gave a very coach speak answer that didn't instill a ton of confidence. And that's where a lot of this is going to come back to coaching, because Ryan Day being asked, and I get like, what do you want him to say? Right.
Yeah.
Asking Ryan Day, do you expect to be like, are you the guy? Are you confident in yourself? Are you the guy next year? And him going, yes, was said with the same level of certainty. Like when I ask my 2-year-old, hey, are you stinky? And he says, no. but he won't make eye contact. My nose is telling me something different, my guy.
Yeah, to me, and I know you're going to hate this analogy but to me, this feels very similar to the Jim Harbaugh situation at Michigan before everything changed. A lot of Michigan fans, including you, I believe, were right there where you were like, yeah, if he doesn't turn the page here, he's got to go. And I think that's where I'm at with Ryan Day now, is I look at his resume and I go, yeah, I don't care if you don't lose to other Big Ten teams. I don't care what that record is, because you lose the games that you're supposed to, and especially in the 12-team playoffs now, where if you dropped a game to a Nebraska, it doesn't necessarily kill your season. Yeah. I want to know how you compete and how we look when it comes to the big games that are must-wins. And he hasn't looked great. And so to me, I think before the season, I was, okay, this is his prove-it season. I got to see it. Now I'm at the line where I go, if they bring him back next year, let's say he loses to Tennessee. Yeah. They bring him back next year. If we don't go out there and this is a vastly different mentality from him, from the coaching staff, from the players, you've got to move on, because now it's going to start to bleed in almost like a disease in that program. You're going to have a culture shift where you're going to have players that aren't going to want to come there because the name of Ohio State doesn't mean as much now, because why would I want to come there? You guys aren't really competitors for a national championship. You're going to start losing recruits. You're going to have people that are going to go to the NIL. You're going to have coaches like you already saw in the recent weeks, Brian Hartline being interviewed, ultimately not being chosen, but being interviewed for West Virginia's head coaching job. They decided for whatever reason to go with Rich Rodriguez, as if they hadn't already seen that before.
Yeah. He was good there, though.
How many years ago? When
a long time ago.
Yeah.
And then Michigan got him.
When Pat White was their quarterback. And if you don't know, you know. Then, and so you're looking at this and you're going, those guys are going to start to get, it's only a matter of time before Hartline gets a coaching opportunity.
Yeah.
And this was the first you saw of it. And if things don't change, if the mentality of the Ohio State culture, if you don't start going back and being competitive, winning against Michigan, being competitive in the playoffs, it's going to hurt the program for years to come. Well, and so you got to weed the disease out early. And I hope that it's similar to what happened with Jim Harbaugh, where people were right at that edge and then it shifted and look what happened.
I think you had mentioned, and I know where your heart's at. I don't even think that we're talking about next year. I think you're there now, right? Like I think you're there now. Like,
I am.
Like you're saying, like the collective whole.
I am. I am there now.
Yeah, because I don't know how you couldn't be. Because like we said last episode, if you don't beat Michigan, you don't win the Big Ten championship, you don't win a natty. What am I paying you for?
100%. And
Owen, I mean, you haven't done any of those things in 21, 22, 23.
This isn't
24 is. It's looking dicey.
This isn't Syracuse where you take a mid Kyle McCord and you go out there and say,
that is top 10 Heisman candidate.
There is not a soul. There are so many other guys. Don't even get me started on that. But this isn't a Syracuse where you go 9-3 and you celebrate like it was the national championship and start yapping. That's not the standard at Ohio State. This year was an unacceptable year so far. Even if you win a national championship, people are still going to talk about the end of November. And they're going to talk about Ryan Day's mentality, depending on what these games look like. Yeah. Regardless of a national championship, that conversation doesn't ultimately die. People are still going into next year. The pressure for you beating Michigan is going to be the same, if not even significantly worse.
Yeah. Well, and that's the interesting thing too, is like, does, going into next year, like and I think you're exactly right. And if you're listening into this podcast as a like non-Ohio State, non-Michigan, you're just a college football fan, that sounds insane. Oh, you could win a national title and still be on the hot seat? Absolutely, you could.
It makes it a little cooler.
In this, a little bit, yeah.
You put an ice pack on it for a second, but
by the time November rolls around again, that conversation is going to be had. The difference, and we mentioned this, last week on the pod as well. The difference between the Jim Harbaugh, 0-5 thing and what Ryan Day's got right now with 1-4, whatever it is not to belabor the point, but is what you inherited when you took over, right? Like there's a reason Jim Harbaugh was brought in. It's because Brady Hoke was terrible. Because in that, in the Rich Rod and Brady Hoke era, Michigan went, and I don't even remember the year now, but Michigan went 3-9 at one point, I think under Rich Rod. That was kind of the end of him. Brady Hoke, his last season at Michigan, they went 5-7. And you brought Jim Harbaugh in and he immediately rattled off a couple 10-win seasons. Like what, he wasn't able to get past Ohio State. A lot of that was you just had whatever it was. Let's call it a decade for lack of, rounding and whatever else. You just had a decade, more or less, of horrific football, horrific recruiting between Rich Rod and Brady Hoke, or at least horrific development. It was. So of course there was a massive gap there. But when you're already being able to pull together 10-win seasons, and even though you couldn't quite get there, like, yes, eventually you have to do that, which is why people like me were going, okay, how much time do we have to give you? There's a difference between that and inheriting the Ferrari that Urban left him. And
that's for sure where it differs.
And
but
having success right off the bat. And then what? Like since post-COVID, there's not been anything,
and that's where that analogy differs.
No,
but
from
I
a fan base standpoint,
it's similar in the point that our heads were at.
Correct. I just want to make sure that we're drawing a distinction between the inheritance. So give me one more time, because it's been a moment. Give me your final score one more time here.
Yeah, I think it's a nail biter. I think Ohio State has the edge, 27-24. I think they pull it off and we get a rematch at the Rose Bowl.
I'm taking Tennessee 23-17. Mostly because I just feel like the running ability of Tennessee, I think they have a more diverse. I think they've got a more diverse play call that will have better margins of success than Ohio State does in this game. And particularly, I'm poking. I didn't mention this, but I'm poking also at a one-dimensional Michigan team who ran for like 175 yards on the defense. The defense was not the issue, by the way, and we've said that. But a one-dimensional Michigan ran for 175. What happens when you've got a team that can actually pass the ball downfield, or a mobile quarterback in there too? Which I think that changes things.
He's not a phenomenal passer.
No, but he's better than Davis Warren.
He is better than Davis Warren, but
the bar is low.
The talk of him coming in like he's a superstar level quarterback.
He's not. He's a redshirt freshman.
I think when I look at this, I give the nod at QB to Will Howard
for sure.
I think I give overall defense to Ohio State. The running back, it just depends. I don't want to discredit anything Quinshon Judkins or Travion have done this year, because they've split a lot of responsibilities. So their stats aren't going to be as inflated as they probably were if they were the feature back.
Quinshon, I think, is like 77th or something.
Yeah, he's got 800 something yards.
He's a better back than that.
Travion's got 700 something. I would put them both talent wise on par with what Dylan Sampson was going to bring.
See, I think that's way overblown. But yeah, and again, a lot of this will come down to also, hey, you got what's the game plan?
Yeah,
it's Josh Heupel against Ryan Day. Like, it's what's the game plan? What's the scheme? What's the execution?
What's Chip Kelly going to bring to the table?
Chip Kelly gets some media availability finally this week.
And we glanced over it a little bit, but here's the biggest shame from the Michigan game is this is the first time Chip Kelly has been in front of the media since then, which feels soft to me.
Yeah. I mean, you said it, not me. I agree.
That's the OSU side. To me, it has been weeks. Yeah. And this is the first time that man has been there. If you think he's getting any questions about Tennessee, you're out of your mind. Out of your mind.
So you play Tennessee, you excited? That's cool. I have got 57 other questions.
First off, I got a lot of questions. First off, how dare you?
Thank you for that reference. Hey, maybe you feel a little bit like Chip Kelly in Ohio State. You know what you're doing isn't working, and you need to transfer in some help. Our friends at Elevated Integrity Construction are the portal to a successful project. Aaron and his team have been doing this a long time. Communicate openly and honestly. You will be wowed at the finished product. Home, church, or business build, the folks with integrity in their name at elevatedintegrity.com. We're grateful to them for sponsoring yet again another season of the Rivalry podcast. Rivalry also proud to be part of the Varsity Network from Learfield this season, a must-have for every college football fan. A free app in the App Store and Google Play Store. You can enjoy live college football games and podcasts just like this one. Search for your school to find tailored content, or search for the Rivalry podcast in the Varsity Network app. We also mentioned this already, but rivalpod.com, photo gallery, articles, link to the YouTube episodes as well. And you can support the podcast, especially as we head into the postseason, as we look ahead to some different opportunities next season as well. Your support makes a massive difference. So thank you for considering supporting at rivalpod.com and at rivalpod on social media, because you're going to be at the shoe. Like we mentioned earlier in the episode, you'll be at the shoe on Saturday.
Fan bases aside, I'm so jacked to be there.
It's going to be good, man.
A game under the lights at the shoe. Two really fun offenses to watch.
And I don't think they've played each other since 96,
yeah,
97,
been a while.
somewhere
Eddie
in there.
George and Peyton Manning were playing.
So it's been a minute. It's been a minute. You got anything else here on particularly college football playoff that we should hit here? Yeah. By the way, structurally, in case you're wondering, like, hey, what about the Michigan side of this? Like, we will next episode, Monday. Which will be Monday, the 23rd. So right, just in time for Christmas. we will be previewing the Michigan-Alabama game. We'll be recapping Ohio State-Tennessee, and then previewing either Ohio State-Oregon or just what the college football playoff field looks like. So Michigan-Alabama, we're going to do that on December the 23rd. So again, be sure to subscribe.
Yeah, I want to do two questions because they're both playoff related. So I'm going to start with the first one, and then we can close with the second. The first one being, which college football playoff team outside of Ohio State, because I think that's the clear-cut answer, has the most to prove? And then the second one following up, what 4 teams, let's do an early prediction.
Ooh.
What 4 teams do you got playing in the semis?
And so the first one was who besides
what team in
Ohio
the playoffs
State?
besides Ohio State, because I feel like they're the clear-cut answer for this,
Yeah.
has the most to prove?
I mean, probably Penn State, yeah?
I've got 3 answers. I was going to let my
I've got 3 answers.
you know how I am. Because I have numerous teams in my head, and I got to just let my heart go with one in the moment.
Got 3 answers.
You've got 1. That's funny. It's cute. I've got 3.
I'm going to say Penn State, and there's a couple of reasons why. Number one, they have, at least on paper, what looks like the easiest path in the playoff.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a home game against SMU. You'll get to play a neutral site game against Boise. It's the playoffs, so any team in there has a chance, right? Again, a chance can vary depending on the matchup and the team, but like any team in there has a chance. SMU absolutely has a chance to beat Penn State. Boise absolutely has a chance. It's still the easiest path for Penn State.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they need to prove that. And then, while it's because he made the Big Ten championship, it's not as warm as Ryan Day's seat right now. He also isn't, losing massive rivalry games in the same way that Ryan Day is. But like James Franklin has stuff to prove still, right? Like James Franklin, look at the end of the Ohio State game where Ryan Day did beat James Franklin. The frustration that the fan base has with James and the lack of tangible success, the lack of trophies, the lack of hardware, the lack of postseason success. He's got a lot to prove still. I don't think Penn State fans are just happy to be there, nor should they be. So I think Penn State.
That was one of mine, but I actually ended up crossing them off because I disagree a little bit because I think you brought up my point. They have the easiest path. So to me, them beating an SMU and beating a Boise doesn't prove anything to me. It just
still
doesn't.
Playoff wins though.
Yeah, but it's like playing Arizona State. Like
Cam Scadaboo is going to be haunting somebody's nightmares.
The best running back. I love that name. I don't know if those wins impress me enough.
Okay.
Now, granted, they could come out there and blow them out, and then maybe my tune would be different. Sure. But right now, I'm looking at that, and I'm going, well, yeah, they're an automatic bid to the semis because, of course, Penn State's going to beat SMU, and they're going to beat Boise. So I guess I look at that, and I go, that doesn't really impress me. Who I think has the most to prove is Indiana or Notre Dame. I think for all the talk we always hear about Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman, he just signed an extension yesterday to remain with the team for, I think, another 4 years, something like that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of talk, and I don't think enough talk about his job, because what have they really done recently? Not a lot of anything.
Yeah, okay.
Not a lot of anything. And so to me, I think they get a favorable matchup against Indiana to start. That's a Friday night game I'm jacked about. And then the next team you would play is Georgia. I'm ready to see what this Notre Dame team is about. I want them to get past Indiana so I can see what this team can do against a team like Georgia. And on the other side, I think Indiana's in the same boat. You look at them and you go, okay, you played one team all year and you got boat raced by them.
Yeah.
There's a lot of talk, mostly from me, about do you even belong to be in the playoffs? And I would say from an eye test, no. You played one team that was worth anything and they smoked you. And so I look at this and I go, okay, get past the Notre Dame. That would be a quality win, whether I think Notre Dame is a legit team or not.
Notre Dame is playing a real good football right now, though.
And while I don't think either of these teams are on a level of a Texas or anything like that, I kind of view them the same, where I go, what have you really done? Your record's great, sure, but what have you really done?
Man.
But if Indiana or Notre Dame, whoever wins that game goes on and they play Georgia, that's what I'm going to be curious to see, because in my mind, it's going to look a lot like Georgia TCU from years ago. Not that bad in the national championship where they got destroyed.
Really?
I don't think it's going to be that bad. I think that was a rare occurrence.
You think Georgia will smoke Notre Dame if they got through Indiana?
I think it would be clear
that's
double digits.
That's what you're saying.
I think it would be clear double digits. I think 17 plus, I would feel confident.
Holy cow. Well,
even with Gunnar Stockton at the helm.
Now seems like a good time to go ahead and give you my semifinal picks.
If you have Notre Dame, we're done. This is the last episode.
Promise?
Yes, pinky.
First team in, Notre Dame.
Gross.
I've got a Penn State Notre Dame matchup in the semis.
I'd be very interested in that.
And I'll tell you right now, I've got Notre Dame winning it.
Spicy.
So I've got Notre Dame, Penn State, and I have Notre Dame winning that game as of right now. And then I've got Oregon and Texas. Which obviously I have Oregon winning the whole dang thing. So
I've got Texas coming through, Ohio State.
Please stop.
Penn State, Georgia.
We have done 45 minutes of this podcast talking about the mental block for Ryan Day, and you're going to take Ohio State to the semifinals. Do you take them further? Who is your championship game right now?
They would play Texas, and that would be a coin flip. That would be a coin flip for me. I would go with Ohio State. I would go. I said it before, and I stand by it, mostly because I think that's what you are as a fan. You're a little bit ignorant. And I think Ohio State,
maybe more than a little bit.
I think Ohio State across the board has the talent to compete with anybody.
Yeah, no one's questioning the talent on this team. We're questioning the execution and the coaching.
Yeah, I think that they can beat Tennessee, and I think that can be a positive thing going forward. It's hard to beat the same team twice, and I think the Oregon game was a close game. I think Ohio State, regardless of the outcome, they were right there. That game was a 50-50 flip the whole way.
I thought I was rolling the dice.
I think you having Notre Dame is catastrophic.
An Oregon Notre Dame national title game, I thought was rolling the dice.
It is because
it's not.
Stupid Genius died until now. It is brought back for just that matchup.
Hey, who won that, by the way, this season? I think it was me.
Barely. And did you feel good about it? No.
I did. No, I did feel good about it.
Penn State feels just like a lock to me. As much as I would love to see them get beat first round by SMU, it ain't going to happen. When they go to Boise, I just think they're going to be too much for Boise. Georgia just feels like a lock to me.
There's just a lot of, as much as I don't enjoy the 12-team playoff, there's a lot of curious storylines here with the Carson Beck injury. Obviously, Boise State getting the bye. Should they be in? Ashton Genty not winning the Heisman. Does he have something to prove now?
I am glad.
All this stuff. This is what we live for as far as football goes, right?
The best thing in the world.
Your football life is focused on this right here.
Looking at this weekend, I'm so glad with how they scheduled the games because obviously I'll be on the field for Saturday.
It's a blessing.
But Friday, you get the matchup that I'm most excited to watch outside of Ohio State and Tennessee with Notre Dame, Indiana. I'm ready for that. Then Saturday at noon, isn't that the SMU and Penn State?
It is.
I'll leave right a little bit before that game is over. I'll make it to the shoe. See Ohio State play Tennessee at night. And the only game that I'm really missing is Texas-Clemson, which I don't think is going to be that good of a game.
I think people are, I took Texas in that game, obviously, but I think people are underestimating Clemson. I really do. I think Clemson's, we talked last week about the team that is most likely to pull off an upset. And I think I concluded SMU probably. I think Clemson might be in there too. I think Clemson's in that conversation. It's going to be a blast either way. Above all, two things. Number one, subscribe to the podcast. Number two, make sure you're following @RivalPod, Twitter, X, and Instagram in particular. On YouTube as well. Please subscribe there. That means a lot. But for the coverage of Ohio State, Tennessee on Saturday night, you're going to be field level for this stuff. It's going to be a riot. Just as a Michigan man and all that stuff. The atmosphere at the shoe is an absolute blast. It's not the toughest environment in football. No, it's not all this other stuff. It's a great college football environment still. It's going to be a blast. It's going to be freezing. I hope you bought some hand warmers.
I have some gloves that are in my Amazon cart as we speak.
You had to Amazon Prime gloves. You live in Ohio, my guy.
Doesn't matter.
It sounds like you're as prepared as Ryan Day is going to be.
I stay inside when it's winter.
So does Ohio State. So good luck to everybody. Hey, again, next Monday, recap of Ohio State, Tennessee, Michigan, Alabama preview, as well as a preview of the next rounds of the college football playoff. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for listening. This is The Rivalry.
The Rivalry is a production of River Radio Ministries. Want live updates from the show? Follow us on Twitter and Instagram @RivalPod. To learn how to support the show, shop our merch, and read our blogs, visit rivalpod.com. Make sure to follow us wherever you're listening now. And if you like what you're hearing, tell a friend so they can listen too.